Hello and welcome everyone to the EQI Debrief webinar, where myself, David Corey, and my colleague, Kim Cairns. Kim, say hello to everyone.
Good morning, folks.
We are going to demonstrate for you what a debrief conversation sounds like. And of course, what we are debriefing are the results of the Emotional Quotient Inventory 2.0 Leadership Report. The Emotional Quotient Inventory is from Multi Health Systems Incorporated, based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and they published the EQI 2.0, and which was first released as the original version in 1997 and was updated in 2011 to produce the to produce the 2.0 version. And this leadership report is brand new for 2012 or 2013 is actually I think it's 2013, isn't it, Kim?
Yeah, 2013. It came out, I don't
Yeah,
know, I think in February, I think.
that's right. I think it was very early on in the year. When our company started using the leadership report with our managers for leadership development, we fell in love with this tool and this report because of its focus on leadership and leadership development. It's so great to see so many of you who have logged in from all over the world. I see someone from Switzerland. I see people from various parts of North America, and just welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you decided to take time out of your day to join us for this webinar. So what's going to happen is I'm going to play the role of the client, and Kim is going to play the role of the coach. And this is my first time actually talking about my results. What we generally do at the Emotional Intelligence Training Company is we send the results out to people uh, prior to the conversation, but not too much time prior to. We don't want people to read the reports and possibly misinterpret information that's there. We want them to read it and sit with it for a bit and then have the conversation quite quickly. So that process is anywhere from the night before to hours or even a half hour before the call, so that we have the opportunity to really review it with people, so they don't come to incorrect conclusions or misinterpretations. Okay, so we're going to carry this on for about 40 minutes or so, and then we're going to open it up for questions. And if you have questions that you'd like to prepare for us, please feel free to use the chat window. However, we're not going to interrupt the debrief session to take those questions. We're going to wait till the end. So please hang in there with us and use the chat box. Type in your questions, click on the little hand and raise your hand if you wish, and we'll try to get to your questions following the demonstration debrief. Okay, so are you ready, Kim?
Yes, Dave.
All right, then let's go. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Kim, and I'm going to take on the role of Dave, a manager in a fairly large size technical organization that deals with various technical and intellectual pursuits. Go, Kim.
Hello, Dave.
Hello, sir.
Thank you for taking the time today to go over your debrief on your leadership report. I know you have a very busy schedule, and I'm glad we could arrive at a time where we could get together to do this. Just a couple of things off the top. I'd like to let people know immediately that this conversation and the contents of the report and our subsequent conversations are absolutely confidential. I don't share that information with anybody, and you own the contents of the report.
Great. Well, that's really good to hear, because I was a little bit worried and a little bit concerned when I read the report, saw that I had some lower scores, and I was worried that my boss was going to see a copy of the report, and I don't know. Somehow it would come into our performance conversation. So I'm really glad to hear you say that it's confidential.
Good, good. I will point out that at some point I may be encouraging you to have discussions with your boss about what this process has been like for you and what you've learned through the process and what growth has taken place.
Fair enough.
So you've had a chance to read through the report.
I have.
And how did it look to you? What are your initial feelings after looking through the report?
Well, I guess, and this is probably typical, I don't know, but some of the lower scores kind of concerned me a bit. I thought that things like problem solving. I'm a pretty technical guy, and I'm involved in pretty technical work, and I like to think that I'm pretty good at problem solving, and yet the test said I wasn't that good at it. So that concerns me.
So the results are less than you had hoped for in some areas.
Yeah, yeah. I just would have thought that I would score higher in something as technical as problem solving.
Well, and I think it's important to keep in mind that from an emotional intelligence perspective, um, there's quite a bit more to problem solving than just solving the technical aspects of the problem.
Okay.
It's a it's about the notion of taking a look at how it is impacting me working my way through the problem, and the relationship with others that are working with me at solving the problem as well. So it's
Oh,
that relationship aspect to problem solving, both with that inner relationship with ourselves and what's going on with that team around us that we're really taking a
oh.
look at.
Okay, well that makes more sense then because I was just thinking it was, my ability to find solutions and uh I didn't think about all the other parts of problem solving. So that makes more
Right.
sense.
Okay. Okay. Good. Um, Now, did you take a look? I think it's on the second page. You have your report in front of you.
I do.
Let's just go to the second page, which is the introduction page.
Okay.
And you've read through that. Do you feel like you have a pretty good grasp of the transformational leadership model?
Well, this is all new to me, and I kind of always thought that that leadership was about getting people to do what you need to get them to do, and also all these things like authenticity, coaching. These things are somewhat new to me, and I kind of get it on one level, but on the other, it's completely foreign. I mean, let me tell you about our company. It's very technical and very competitive environment. It's very you kind of get ahead in this company by kind of walking on the backs of others. And this is not a kind of it's not kind of a team oriented kind of group hug kind of company. We don't do that stuff here.
And how's that working for you at this point? How are you thriving in that kind of climate?
Well, I never thought about thriving at work. I mean, I just try to get through each day, and it's stressful. It's anxiety producing. Yeah, I mean, if I just think that that's kind of what work is all about, isn't it? I mean, isn't that what work is? It's hard.
Uh, I think that can definitely be the case for a lot of people. I guess from my perspective, I think it's important to explore what has real meaning and value to you with regard to work, considering the fact that you're probably spending, and I would hazard a guess in your case, a minimum of 8 hours a day on the job site.
Oh, I'm lucky if I only spend 8 hours a day at work.
Exactly. So, there's a big chunk of your life, and I think when we look at life as a continuum, how much value are you garnering from being in that kind of atmosphere?
Yeah, you're speaking almost a different language to me here, Kim. I mean, value that I derive from work. I mean, I provide value to my employer. In terms of value to me, I mean, I don't think in those terms.
You don't think in those terms. Well, there has to be some value in your work in order to keep you there. What is that that's valuable about your work?
My paycheck.
that's that's a pretty short summation of value.
Yeah. So tell me,
So,
Kim, what can I learn from this report? I mean, a guy like me who's in a competitive technical environment, how is this going to benefit me?
well, I think the thing we need to take a look at, Dave, is you have what I think about 4 or 5 people that report to you that are part of your team.
Yeah, that's right. Hmm.
I think what we can look at is what's happening with regard to your team now, and the challenges that you face at work, and and how everybody is functioning within that context, and and what avenues might be available for enhanced performance in that situation, not only on your part but on your team's part too. I think it's important to consider the value of relationship in that technical setting that you're in order to produce the results that your boss is wanting to see from you.
But isn't my relationship, Kim, one of manager to employee? And isn't my job to make sure that they do what we need to do as a company in order to make money?
And you feel that your team's operating at the optimum right now with that frame of reference?
Oh, optimum. Oh, no. No. Um, so so where are we going with this, Kim? I mean, is this going to help me to get people do what I need to make them do?
Um, I'm hoping what it's going to do is give you a different perspective on how to make those things happen.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so
I'm open because I guess, Kim, what I'm saying is that in terms of my working with my team, it's frustrating. I feel a lot of stress and a lot of pressure to come up with solutions, and that is extremely wearing on me. I mean, I would like work to be less stressful. If this can help me to come up with some ways of making work less stressful, that would be a value add right there.
well, I think that's eminently achievable. And
Okay.
and and
Okay.
given
I'm yours. You tell, tell me how work can be less stressful. I'll be all over that.
okay, excellent. So it's in terms of taking a look at the report, really what we're talking about here are 15 what I would call emotional intelligence competencies. And these are the competencies that all 7 billion plus of us have. One of the wonderful things about this language of emotional intelligence is having that common language to talk about how we all operate. So you'll see on page 3, there's the model right there.
Hmm.
And it's broken down into 5 composites
Okay.
with 3 subcomposites in each category.
Okay.
So you can take a look at that top one, that self-perception composite, self-regard, self-actualization, emotional self-awareness. Uh, that's how you perceive yourself. And then if we move to the right, we have self-expression. And that's how you articulate what's going on inside and how you display what's happening inside.
Okay. That makes sense.
We move around the wheel to the right again, and we're in the interpersonal composite.
Okay.
And this is really what I was driving at, Dave, in terms of talking about not just the technical aspects of the job, but the fact that in any job situation, we're working in conjunction with other people. And there are various layers of people, depending on what the organization looks like. So those interactions with others play a very key role in us achieving what we need to achieve on the job site from a job description point of view.
Okay, so let me just interrupt there, Kim, because I remember my scores and I know that I do pretty well in the ones you just mentioned so far. So those I think that those are going fairly okay for me. It's these
Okay.
last two categories that
Right.
where I'm experiencing some challenges, and that's what I want to talk about.
Yes. Okay, good. And what I'm hoping to do too is talk about how you can leverage some of your strengths to enhance those lower composites that are in that lower stage right now at the time you
Okay.
sat down to do this assessment.
Okay, great.
So yes, when we look at your lower scores, your lowest is stress tolerance, and you've already made reference to that.
I'm
I'm
just
getting a
gonna go.
strong sense that you find you can go to the next. Yeah, it's one more page after this one. We'll give you all of the bar graphs, so that just kind of lays out that global
Okay.
picture for us.
Okay, what are those gold bars, Kim?
Well, those gold bars, Dave, are where a group of upper level managers and CEOs who are acknowledged as being really strong leaders tend to score with regard to these competencies.
I think I
So as
read
you can
that. I read
see,
that. It's earlier in the report. It mentions that. So yeah,
that's right. It's
okay.
back on that introduction
Okay, good. So
page.
that's the range we're shooting for here. So I should be the
Well, yeah, yes.
okay.
You, and when you've articulated very well that in those first two composites, you're well into the gold bar in every one of those categories.
Yep.
And then we come to the interpersonal, and there's a bit of a gap there.
Oh, right. Yeah, I thought I was good in those areas, but
Well, I think I think it's important to keep in mind about balance, Dave. It's
okay.
not just about having a high score.
Okay.
Um, so your scores are actually right on the mean there in that composite, slightly below the gold bar in some of those categories.
Right.
So what we're going to do is take a look at a bit of that, but then we move down to the decision making, and this is where we've got a bit more of a gap happening.
Right.
And as you've already stated, you're quite aware of that. And then we move down to the stress management composite, and again, a couple of not bad scores in there, and then that stress tolerance is showing that it's a big factor in your life.
Right.
So when we take a look at that stress tolerance, tell me how stress is manifesting itself with you right now.
Okay, Kim. Well, you know what? Let me tell you about a fairly typical day at work. So
Okay.
what happens is I come in the morning, and my boss either has an email message ready for me or calls me on the phone to tell me about a new crisis of some kind, and
Mm,
something that requires us to, as a team, completely change our focus, drop what we're doing. It's a new priority, and so I feel like I have to. If I'm talking on my cell phone, I have to go to my office, go into my office, close the door. I've got to, come up with the solution, and then I've got to pull my team together. I've got to tell them what the solution is, and I know that they're going to be resistant, there's going to be pushback, they're going to have other ideas, and it's all extremely stressful. And if I would just love to do this a different way, I'm at a loss as to how I'm going to be able to do this. And one of the things that happens as a result is the only thing that I feel like I have control over is and it's confession time, Kim. I'm a junk food junkie. I've got this drawer
mm,
full of junk food, and when these things happen to me and I'm feeling extremely stressed, I reach for the junk food. And so, that impulse control, I relate to that as a lower score, because yeah, I can't control my impulses to eat when I'm feeling stressed. And it's a terrible cycle that goes on almost every day, or at least a few times a week. And I just don't know what to do about that.
right, right. Has that always been the case for you?
It's gone on for a long time, and I've got
Okay.
the extra pounds to demonstrate the result of that, and I feel, stressed when I think about work, and anxious about dealing with the various things I have to deal with at work, and so those are the things that I'd like to do differently.
Right, and you've really linked together those three lower scores in relating to me what happens on a pretty regular basis. That you're presented with a problem, you feel like you need to come up with a solution, and closeting yourself away in your office, working on that, struggling with that, causes quite a great deal of stress.
It
And your
does.
immediate impulse is to reach for the junk food.
It's true.
So
That's exact.
you've linked all three of your lower scores together in that story, and I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to consider maybe a different approach to a to an upcoming call from your boss about a problem that needs to be resolved. I mean, if you're coming to me and saying, this is what I've been directed to do, here are my feelings around it. You have a really strong emotional expression score.
Hmm.
So you have that capacity to be able to express what's going on internally.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I don't really have a problem with that, but
Yeah.
again,
And I think it's again an opportunity. This is what's going on for me now, and I'd like to try a new approach with this problem. I've found over the last year, I continue to go and lock myself in the office, try and come up with a solution on my own. And as we all know, there's been both both positive and negative implications with that process. So I am wanting to try a different process with you folks. How difficult would it be for you to say that, do you think?
that would be really hard, and I would be really nervous or anxious about how they might respond to it. But I'm willing to I'm willing to try some of that. So so yeah, I leave it with me, and see, one of the things that I kind of get, and like what you're saying, is you made me think of a boss that I had years ago, where he would bring me into his office, and he would share with me a problem that he was having. And what I liked about that was that you're right, he was valuing my opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
and then when we would come up with a solution that affected me, I felt much better about the solution than if he had. Oh no, I think I understand what you're pointing out to me, and that is that I think I know how my people are feeling when I come out of my office and tell them what I've decided. That is that
Yes.
they weren't part of the decision.
Yes.
That so
So I
that's
think,
that's why they're resistant. I mean, I
mhm,
I was never resistant to a solution that this particular boss came up with when he invited me into the conversation about the solution.
well, I think that's a very astute observation on your part about how you responded to your leader interacting with you in that fashion.
Yep, just having all kinds of lights go on for me here, Kim. You're a very good coach.
Well, I think what I'm trying to get you to see, and I think that I mean, you have this capacity, Dave. You have some very strong scores, and and a tremendous capacity to be a leader. What I'm trying to do here is weave in this whole interpersonal composite and just how important it is in the workplace.
Right.
And you've articulated that, when you felt like you were performing best and really motivated to perform, you were doing that under a leader that included you and sought out your opinion and your thoughts and your perspectives.
Yeah, and what I'm another connection that I'm making here is that the culture of our organization is that it's very much individualistic. That while we
Hmm.
we talk about having teams, but we don't work together like a team. Nobody does, and it's
Right.
it's all about individual achievement. And so
Hmm.
those solutions that I come out of my office with having made, those are kind of like my go on my record, kind of, not formally but kind of informally, and
Right.
every and
Right.
s- and so to do what you're suggesting and work more as a team with my team, sounds kind of funny, but it's true, is kind of a bit to go against sort of the nature of our, or the culture of our organization, which is very much individualistic and very competitive.
Right. Right. And so it's actually an opportunity, though, to take a few little baby steps towards changing that culture.
Yeah, and the more we talk about it, the more motivated I am to try to, make those little changes in my area, because I kind of see what's in it for me and for the team.
Yes. So you begin to get a sense of, if you exert a bit more impulse control to go with your usual default response and try something different, you actually could end up coming up with better solutions to some of the problems that you're facing.
I think so.
And I just want to reinforce that, I think when we have inclusion in teams, I think it's uh, it's important for you to be able to say, folks, I want your opinions and thoughts on this, and I want you to know that I still carry the responsibility of the final decision.
Right,
So that's expressing that's the reality of your situation and your company at this point.
right. Yeah, and
And
I got some pretty smart people on my team. I mean, I'm just kind of smiling to myself, imagining their faces, when I actually ask about for their input into the solution to our next
mhm,
challenge.
mhm. And just going back to those four pillars of transformational leadership, what you'll be doing will be innovative within your company.
Okay, let's go back and take a look at those for a moment. Okay, so authenticity, coaching, insight, and innovation. Okay, so tell me about those again. How do those relate to me?
Well, you're being with regard to this specific new attempt that you're going to try,
Yeah.
and I said tomorrow, but let's try and make it over maybe the next week, because I'd like you to give some thought to how you're actually going to approach your team.
Yep.
So you're being authentic in terms of, I feel a lot of pressure to have to make these decisions, and I've placed myself in a position where I put that pressure on myself, and I haven't included you folks.
Well, and that's honest. I wouldn't be making that up. That would be
That's
that
right,
would be
exactly. That's
that's
authentic.
okay.
And you're being innovative by saying, let's acknowledge what this culture is like, folks. We've all worked in this company for a long time, and it places a lot of pressure on individuals.
And pretty cutthroat. I've seen people step on other people to get, to
Right.
advance their own careers.
Right. And so it's an acknowledgement of what's really going on. It's stating what the issue is, and saying, I'd like to try a different approach.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that would be innovative in our company. Absolutely.
Well, and it's just a small step towards change. And in terms of behavioral change, we don't leap out of telephone booths in a cape and a whole different way of operating.
Right.
We make little incremental changes that end up shifting how things operate, both ourselves and those around us.
Right.
And what it also does is it demonstrates that insight into what's really going on in the workplace, and the
Yes.
component of those human interactions that are at the core of every technical decision you're making.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. Yes. I'm feeling kind of energized by this conversation.
Well, that's good. That's good. Um, so, and you need to keep in mind too that we will have ongoing conversations about this, right?
Right.
I think that one of the things that happens is when we try something on new for the first time and we stumble a bit,
Yep.
we have that tendency to go back to our old way of operating because it felt uncomfortable.
Hmm.
So, one of the things that I want you to think about over the next week is getting comfortable with the notion of being uncomfortable.
Right.
Right now, you're uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes, I am.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I think that really we do some of our best learning when we stumble around a bit.
So you're not guaranteeing me, Kim, that I'm not going to feel stressed and anxious about this.
I'm not guaranteeing you that at all, Dave.
I was kind of hoping that you were gonna give me some sort of guarantee that this was gonna be a fairly painless process, but I see that you're not in the business of doing that.
No, there's no guarantees. But what I am in the business of is being with you as you try some different approaches that are going to change the context of what's going on for you in the workplace.
Right.
And we'll walk along together through that and
Okay.
bounce ideas back and forth
Yep.
and be using this leadership report as the baseline. This was a snapshot of you at the time you sat down to do the assessment.
Right.
All of this is changeable
Right.
depending on the motivation to change. And I'm sensing, definitely more lightness in your voice talking about, well, actually, there are some opportunities here. It's not just this black cloud of Mordor hanging over my office door.
It felt like doom and gloom. Tell you.
And I think, I want to be really clear. I think there's going to be feelings of doom and gloom again, but let's take a look at those situations. When you feel doom and gloom starting to land, what's behind that?
Right.
And then what are some different steps that you can take in that moment that would be different from your usual approach to that
Right.
situation?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
being
No.
emotionally intelligent.
Okay. Well, I see that there are things I can do differently, and I'm quite excited to get started. So let me have a crack at it, and we'll I'll look forward to my next conversation with you so that we can talk about how it went.
Excellent. And I want you to know that, if you have any thoughts or questions as you're developing what your approaches are going to be, shoot me an email. Let's have a quick conversation.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Excellent.
So, shall we take questions now and have a bit of a discussion about how this debrief went? And if you would like to put up your hand, you can feel free to do that. I can unmute you to ask your question, or you can simply type your question into the chat box and we can go from there. So let's see what are people saying here. We've got in terms of questions. Okay, so here's a question, and it's about the kind of the surely people aren't so quick to make those changes. Does that really happen? And I can tell you that while it may not happen exactly the way you heard it just now, and having people having big revelatory experiences in a short period of time, I can tell you that it does happen. Kim, how about your experience with respect to those revelations? What has been your experience there?
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in revelations. I don't think it happens a lot. I think it's what I do see though is people kind of landing on one thing that's twigged them to think in a bit of a different way. And it's amazing how quickly that one little spark can move them to a different way of operating.
Right, right. Yeah. Now, what I don't see is I don't see a lot of hands. I see one hand. Jeanette, I'm going to unmute you for a moment so you can ask your question. Kim, I think I have to mute you in order to unmute Jeanette. So hang on a sec.
Okay.
Jeanette, are you there? Bonjour, Jeanette. All right, I don't hear Jeanette, so I'm going to try Alan. I'm going to. I don't know why my controls don't seem to be working all that well here this morning. So I'm going to. Alan, are you there?
Uh, yes,
Hello, Alan. Greetings.
I'm on the phone.
Yes.
Hear me on the phone?
Yes. What is your question, Alan?
Oh, I was just interested in recidivism. Like I work with a lot of people and get them up to say 110%, and then 3 or 4 years down the road, they need a shot in the arm to maintain their appropriate behavior.
Absolutely. Yes. What is your question, Alan?
What is your experience in dealing with how often it happens and how you deal with it?
Sure. Well, I guess, Alan, I'm going to mute you again just because it's a little bit easier here. I guess, Alan, it would really depend on the nature of your program, whatever kind of program that you've got going, whether you're a counselor in private practice or whether you are like most of our work, which is executive or management coaching. Then of course people are going to slip back and one of the models we like is James Prochaska's stages of change. And if you think about that model where you go from pre-contemplation to contemplation to preparation to action, and then the final step is well, it's final step in our books is maintenance. Then you're going to have to maintain the change, and you're going to slip back into your old behavior. So you are going to lapse, and you are going to relapse into your old behavior. So that's never going to change, I think. And then, of course, it is really about the change and how important that is for you and how often you do need to have a touchback session or a tune-up session with your coach or with your counselor, or your therapist, or whomever, in order to maintain that change. So I think that's the nature of coaching, don't you, Kim? That it really is all about your commitment to that change.
Yes, and I just want to say one thing, Dave, around the model itself. What I find, and I've worked with some adolescents using the EQI model, and what it ends up doing is giving people the capacity and the language to be able to talk about what's really going on for them.
Right.
And I think that there's nothing but benefit in that, because as we go through life, we have ups and downs, obviously. And I think that the model actually gives people the capacity to be able to continually understand what's impacting them, how it's impacting them, and what some other steps might be to address that impact if it's negative.
Right. Absolutely. And like anything, it only works if you use it.
Yes.
So I see a question from Jacqueline. Jacqueline, I'm going to unmute you. Hello, Jacqueline. Welcome.
Oh, hi. Do
Do you have a question?
you have a question? No, did I? I didn't. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I just think we must have clicked something that wasn't supposed to be clicked.
No worries. I'm gonna mute you again because I'm hearing a repeat. But it's interesting because beside some names I see a question mark, and beside some names I see a hand. So I guess it would depend on what you have actually clicked. Uh, uh, if you have a question, click on the little hand, and I'll unmute you. And if you have a question that you'd like to type into the chat box, feel free to do that. Let me just ask you, Kim, how did that go from your perspective?
Well, I felt like I stumbled around it initially. One of the things that's really difficult is using a sample report, and it's not a genuine kind of relationship. So it's a role playing kind of scenario, and at times that can be a bit difficult. I think that I love this leadership report. I think it's just a most effective tool to use with people. And it can be a real ongoing effective tool for the people that have gone through the process too. I just can't stress enough how it can help people gain some insights into how they're operating and the potential for changing some of those ways of operating.
Okay, so we've got some more questions here. Thanks, Kim. And Maureen asks, how would you review with someone who is somewhat reluctant or not enthused about the whole process or doesn't agree with the results? You've had a few of these clients, Kim. How would you respond to this? How would you respond to this question?
Yeah, I've had a number of those people, and I think that's one of the unfortunate things. I mean, we end up coming across people who've been directed to go through this process.
Right.
That it hasn't been their idea. They've had a boss not unlike Dave, going into his or her office and then coming out with a directive for the people that work for them. What I try to do is have people get an understanding that this might be an opportunity to do some self-exploration and to actually have a forum to engage in a meaningful conversation about their own lives. And sometimes with people that they're closed to talking about work, they might be open to talking about what's going on in their personal lives with an issue with a relative or a friend, and be able to gain some valuable insight into how those situations are unfolding and some opportunities. So I just keep stressing this is an opportunity, and nobody else is going to hear this conversation. So this is a great chance to be able to talk about what's really going on in your life. And it's interesting how some people can be very, very adamant about not wanting to do it, and then over the course of 3 conversations, they're starting to note some changes that have happened in their lives, some good, some bad, and have gained value from the process. So I've seen some people that were very adamantly refusing actually to engage in the process initially, that by the end of our 4 or 5 conversations are at a totally different place.
Right. Yeah, so let's move to, and you ask a great question, Kim, which I really like, which is, what do you want to get out of this session today? And
Yes.
right off the top, and that really helps with knowing where people are coming from and what their motivation is for having the conversation. We've got another few questions here. So we've got one from Lynn. It's, how do you manage the number of people you're debriefing with? It sounds like you're entering an ongoing coaching relationship, and you're absolutely right, Lynn. We enter every debrief with the idea that this is the start of a coaching relationship, because this is really the diagnostic phase. This is really the sort of the that foundational piece that sort of intro piece to any coaching relationship where you're really asking and discovering sort of what's there. What is that current state all about? And then you can talk about future desired state, and then you can talk about that. You know, how are we going to bridge the gap? But this is about current state. And in terms of managing the number of people that we're dealing with, everybody who goes through one of our group processes, one of our executive development programs, they do get a coach, and so we use a number of coaches, and you can see our team on our website, and that's how we do that is by through using a number of different coaches. I've got another question here. What suggested strategies are recommended to keep the communication between the client and coach when it appears the client has decreased his or her communication? I'm going to pass that one over to Kim. What do you say, Kim? When the client has decreased their communication, how do you keep that conversation going?
I think by asking it, just it's an observation. It can be. It seems like you've started to disengage from this conversation. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's that how they call it in the Coaches Training Institute, dancing in this moment. It's like, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
here's a moment where the client seems to have been going a little bit quieter. What is that about? And even making that observation. So here's a question. What if client asks I am different at home than I am at work? Does this process reflect that? And that's a great question, Barb. Thank you for that question. And really, the EQI in the instructions, the initial instructions, it says to respond to the statements as you are in general. It does not direct you to home or work. And then we're very interested to know in our conversation perhaps a little bit more about what people were thinking about, whether that was work or home, because they'll come up with specific examples. They'll say, oh, actually, at work, I'm really like that, and at home, I'm quite different. So that's kind of interesting to us. It's like, well, why is that? And then we explore that, and in exploring that,
Mm-hmm.
hoping to create a greater awareness. And finally, how do you provide the client with assurance that the tool is valid? Well, that's a good question as well, Barb. And really, we can talk about the 20 years of scientific research. We can talk about the fact that it is the most researched assessment tool for EQ in the world. That came out in the Journal of Organizational Behavior, which was really nice to see. Or we can simply talk about the fact that whether it's valid or not, this is the starting place for a conversation about their EQ. And we can even not be concerned at all about the scores and simply use a list of these competencies, because we know that these 15 competencies are absolutely the thing that's going to help us to understand where people are limited in their effectiveness and where people excel in their effectiveness. And so that's where do you go with this, Kim? How do you answer that question about the validity?
Well, I think one of the things that we've done too is just send out some documents around the validity, and that can I think you get a sense when you're talking with people initially. They may have those questions, and so then just provide them with some documentation around that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Here's a great question. How do you create, what are some ways you could create momentum with change? Thanks, Sue. And again, we use that change model. So we help people to understand that they will go through those stages of change from Prochaska. And then we try to provide the right kind of support at the right time, which is another thing that Prochaska model of change does really well, is to help those of us who are in the human service field to provide the right kind of support at the right time. Because sometimes we're talking about a plan when the client has not even bought in yet to making the change, or it hasn't even made the commitment. And so those are some ways that we could help create momentum with change. Kim, comments on that one?
Yeah, I would concur with that. I think that the more we can get people to think about the fact that change is not linear. There's no linear pattern to it at all, and there's going to be sliding back to different ways of operating. When we get uncomfortable, we go back to our default ways of operating. And just to be able to acknowledge that that's totally normal, and so where are we at right now, and where do you want to go?
Right. Yeah, and so here's another question. Just it looks like we've got about 2 minutes left. We'll keep taking questions until our time is up. When working with a leader or employee who has been addressed with a respect in the workplace breach, the use of EQI could be most valuable for growth in self-awareness. Which is the most appropriate report to be utilizing, the business report or the leadership report? So by your question, Lynn, it looks like you're using the EQI 1.0, the original EQI, because in the 2.0, we only have the workplace report and the leadership report. Now, if we're talking about the 2.0, then the question to ask is, what is the focus of the initiative? If the focus of the initiative is leadership development, our recommendation is to use the leadership report. We work for the Emotional Intelligence Training Company. We are not in a formal business relationship with the publisher, Multi Health Systems, MHS, and we don't get any credit for EQIs that we sell. So you buy those directly from the publisher. So we don't get a markup or a commission on those. However, we think that the leadership report is worth the extra dollars. And FYI, the workplace report, which places EQ in a more general context, is $55 and 55 US dollars, and the leadership report is 80 US dollars. So it's a bit more money, but we think it's well worth it because it includes that model of transformational leadership and frames the comments in terms of leadership. Let's see, we've got a question from Nina. Is this debrief suitable for someone who works specifically with solopreneurs, like coaches and other service-based businesses? Absolutely. It's fantastic for anyone who wants to improve their effectiveness, because we know that solopreneurs have a lot to deal with in terms of stress and pressure of working on their own. And it's how to create that sense of team and that sense of support from others, etc. And then finally, we did a fantastic job today. Thanks, Barb. Great info and some great humor too. Thank you so much for your comments. We're going to stop now. We're going to encourage you, if you want to know more, if you have specific questions, to email Kim or me. That's Kim, K-I-M, at eitrainingcompany.com, or David Corey, David at eitrainingcompany.com. Visit our website for certification information if you've not yet taken the certification course or want to upgrade your skills, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks very much for joining us today, everyone, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful weekend, and please join us again for future webinars. Thanks. Kim, you want to say goodbye?
Thanks, folks.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.